Let me start with the truth. Some of you are not tired because of work. You are tired because of what you are holding. A memory, a betrayal, a mistake, a person who walked away. You smile in public, but inside you replay the same scene again and again, and you call it strength, you call it loyalty, you call it justice. But it is weight. And the question is not why am I hurting? The real question is why am I still carrying what is already gone? Today we talk about letting go, not quitting, not giving up, letting go, because letting go is not weakness, it is power. Here are 7 truths that can transform your pain into peace. The first key point is letting go is an act of self-respect, and it means choosing your own peace over the need to keep carrying what hurt you, not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more. Think about that for a second. Most of us think holding on proves loyalty. We think replaying the hurt shows how deeply we cared. But what if constantly reopening that wound is not loyalty? It is self-neglect. What if every time you revisit that old pain, you are quietly telling yourself, my suffering is acceptable? Letting go is not deleting the memory. It is deciding the memory. It is deciding the memory will no longer decide your worth. Imagine your mind as a house, a beautiful house, spacious, full of light. Now imagine giving one room to someone who disrespected you, not just giving it once, but cleaning it daily, decorating it with your thoughts, replaying their words like background music. They moved out years ago, but you still maintain their room. Why? If someone insulted you in 2018, why are they still getting free Wi-Fi in 2026? At some point, you have to laugh gently at yourself and say, I have been running an emotional hotel and I never charged rent. Self-respect is finally knocking on that door and saying time's up. There was a man I once heard about. Let's call him Daniel. Brilliant at work, kind to friends, but one breakup defined his entire personality. For 3 years, he compared every new person to the one who left. He would say she destroyed my ability to trust. And one day his younger sister looked at him and said, or maybe you are destroying it. That sentence hit him harder than the breakup, because he realized something simple. The past event was real, but the ongoing damage was self-created. He was re-injuring himself in the name of love. When he finally said, I deserve better than living in replay, something shifted, not overnight, not magically, but slowly. He began choosing thoughts that protected him instead of punished him. You see, self-respect is quiet. It does not scream. It does not post dramatic quotes online. It simply refuses to accept emotional leftovers. When you hold on to resentment, you are drinking emotional poison and hoping the other person feels sick. They don't. They are at brunch. They are watching Netflix. They are living. Meanwhile, you are carrying a heavy backpack filled with bricks labeled, why? How could they? If only. Have you ever carried a backpack for hours? At first you don't notice the weight. Then your shoulders ache. Then your posture changes. That is what unresolved pain does to your personality. It bends you slowly. Letting go is taking off the bag and realizing, oh, this is how light feels. Sometimes we think self-respect means proving something. Proving we were right, proving they were wrong. But real self-respect is internal. It is saying, I will not let someone else's behavior define my value. If they cheated, that speaks about their character. If they lied, that speaks about their integrity. Why are you rewriting your identity because of their weakness? A diamond does not become glass because someone dropped it. It remains a diamond, scratched maybe, but still rare, still valuable, still whole. The moment you stop tying your worth to someone else's actions, You take back control of your emotional life. And let's be honest, sometimes holding on feels powerful. Anger can feel strong. It gives you energy. It gives you a story. It even gives you attention. Oh, you won't believe what they did. We gather sympathy like trophies. But at night, when it is quiet, does that anger protect you? Or does it keep your mind racing at 2 a.m.? Self-respect asks a hard question. Is this helping me grow? Or is it feeding my ego? There is a difference. Ego wants to be right. Self-respect wants to be free. One keeps score. The other chooses peace. Think of a child learning to ride a bicycle. They fall. They cry. For a moment they feel the pain. But imagine if that child decided, I will sit on the ground for the next 10 years to prove that falling hurt. It sounds silly, right? Yet adults do this emotionally all the time. We fall in relationships, we fall in business, we fall in trust. And instead of standing up, we sit beside the fall and build a small house there. Self-respect is standing up, brushing off the dust, maybe laughing at yourself a little and saying, well, that was painful, but I am not staying here. It is not denial, it is dignity. It is the quiet decision that your heart is too valuable to be a storage unit for old pain. The second key point is you cannot heal in the same story you keep eating. And it means the narrative you tell yourself every day is either your prison or your path forward. Listen carefully. Your mind is always telling a story. Not out loud, not on a stage, but quietly, constantly. They hurt me. I was not enough. I always mess things up. At first, it feels like truth, solid, unquestionable. But have you ever noticed how the same event can create different stories in different people? One person says that failure ruined me. Another says that failure built me. Same event, different story, different life. Your brain is like a movie director. It takes a scene from your past and edits it, adds music, adds meaning, adds emotion, and then it plays it again and again. But here is the strange part. You are also the screenwriter. You can change the script. Yet most people don't. They cling to the first draft as if it is sacred. This is what happened. This is who I am now. Really? A single chapter becomes your entire book. Imagine reading one bad page in a novel and closing it forever. That is what you do when you freeze your identity. Around one painful moment, I once met a woman named Carla. She started a small bakery. First month, terrible sales. Second month, worse. She told herself, I am not cut out for business. She repeated that line so often, it became her truth. She stopped trying new recipes. She stopped advertising. She slowly closed the shop. Years later, she worked for someone else and still said, I failed because I'm just not capable. But here's what she never considered. What if the story wasn't, I am bad at business? What if it was, I didn't yet know how to market? One story attacks identity. The other addresses skills. Identity stories trap you. Skill stories teach you. Notice the words you use when you talk about your past. Do you say I was rejected or that opportunity didn't align? Do you say I was abandoned or that person chose differently? Words shape emotion. Emotion shapes action. Action shapes destiny. When you keep saying I was betrayed, your body reacts as if betrayal is still happening. Your shoulders tighten. Your trust shrinks. Your guard goes up, and then you meet someone new and you treat them like the villain of an old movie they never acted in. Is that fair? Is that healing? Sometimes we repeat a painful story because it gives us attention. People gather around you when you are wounded. They listen, they comfort, and it feels warm, safe. But comfort built on old pain becomes a cage. I had a friend who joked about his toxic ex for 5 years. Every dinner conversation somehow came back to her. At first, we laughed. Then we realized she was still running his emotional life without even being present. One day, someone teased him and said, "Are you sure you broke up?" Because she's still in the relationship. We all laughed. He laughed too, but later he admitted, "I think I kept the story because I didn't know who I was without it." That is deep. Sometimes the story feels safer than the unknown version of you. Healing requires courage. Not dramatic courage, quiet courage. The courage to question your own narrative. What if you are not bad at love? What if you just loved the wrong person? What if you are not unlucky? What if you simply need new strategies? When you shift the story from permanent identity to temporary experience, something opens up inside you. It creates space. Space for growth, space for possibility, space for hope. And hope is powerful. It changes posture, it changes tone, it changes how you walk into a room. Let me ask you something gently. Who would you be without your favorite painful sentence? Without "I always fail," without "people always leave," without "nothing works for me," would you feel lighter or scared? Because sometimes we hold on to negative stories, the way a child holds onto a blanket. It may be old and torn, but it feels familiar. Letting go of that story feels like stepping into cold air. But that cold air is fresh. It wakes you up. It reminds you that life is not over. You are not finished. The event happened, yes. But the meaning, that is still being written. And you are holding the pen, whether you realize it or not. The third key point is closure is not given, it is created. And it means you stop waiting for someone else to hand you peace and decide to build it yourself. That is hard to hear because waiting feels easier. Waiting feels hopeful. Maybe one day they will call, maybe one day they will explain, maybe one day they will say sorry. And you imagine that magical conversation where everything makes sense. The music plays softly in the background. They finally admit they were wrong. You nod with dignity. Scene ends. But real life is not a movie. Most chapters close without a speech. Most doors shut without a reason written on them. Think about how much energy goes into waiting for closure. You check your phone more than you check your own emotions. You replay the last conversation like a detective analyzing clues. What did they mean by that? Was there a hidden message? You become an FBI agent of your own heartbreak. And let's be honest, if overthinking burned calories, most of us would be athletes by now. But after all the analysis, what changes? Nothing. The silence remains, the unanswered question remains, and your peace remains on hold. There was a young man named Eric who waited 3 years for an apology from a business partner who betrayed him. 3 years, every time the phone rang, his heart jumped. He rehearsed the conversation in his head. So man, why times he could perform both roles, but the call never came. One evening his father asked him, "If he never calls, does that mean you never move on?" That question shook him. He realized he had tied his freedom to someone else's decision. That is like handing someone the keys to your house and hoping they return to lock the door. Why give that power away? Why give that power away? Here is something uncomfortable. Sometimes people cannot give you closure because they do not have clarity themselves. They may not understand why they acted the way they did. They may lack the emotional maturity to admit fault. They may not even see the damage they caused. Expecting deep understanding from someone who acted carelessly is like expecting a broken compass to guide you north. It simply cannot. And yet, you stand there, holding the compass, spinning in circles, saying, Just tell me which way is right. Closure is not a conversation, it is a decision. A quiet, personal decision. It is waking up one morning and saying, even without answers, I choose peace. Notice that word, choose. Not feel, not receive, choose. Feelings may take time to catch up, but decisions can be made today. A woman once told me she wrote a letter to the person who hurt her. She poured everything onto the page: anger, confusion, sadness. Then she sealed the envelope and never sent it. She burned it instead, not as drama, not as revenge, but as a symbol. She said, I realized I did not need him to read it. I needed me to release it. That has created closure. Sometimes we believe closure means understanding every detail. But do you really need every detail? If someone walks out of a restaurant without paying, do you need to know their entire childhood story to recognize it was wrong? No. You acknowledge it, you adjust, you move forward. When someone leaves your life without explanation, it hurts, yes. But their silence is also an answer. It may not be the answer you wanted, but it is information. Information that says, this is not where you are meant to stay, and here is the deeper truth. Waiting for closure keeps you emotionally connected. As long as you expect that final talk, you are still in the relationship, even if the other person has left. You are emotionally paused. Life is moving, but you are buffering. Have you ever watched a video that keeps loading? The circle spins and spins and spins? That is what waiting feels like. Created closure is pressing stop. Not because the video finished perfectly, but because you refuse to waste more time staring at a spinning circle. You step away, you breathe, you accept that some stories end mid-sentence. And you give yourself permission to begin a new paragraph without waiting for someone else to finish the old one. The fourth key point is holding on feels safe, but it is slowly destroying you. And it means the very thing you cling to for comfort is quietly draining your strength. At first, holding on feels like control. It feels strong. I will not forget. I will not let this go. There is a strange pride in it. A tight grip that says, I am not weak. But have you ever noticed how your body feels when you hold your fist tight for too long? Try it. Clench your hand. Keep it tight. At first, nothing. Then tension. Then pain. That is what emotional holding does. It starts as power and ends as pressure. You tell yourself, if I let go, it means it didn't matter. But that is not true. Letting go does not erase importance, it releases imprisonment. Think of a child who refuses to let go of a broken toy. The wheel fell off, the sound doesn't work. But the child says, it's mine, and they carry it everywhere. After a while, it's not a toy anymore. It's just weight. And the funny part, adults do the same thing with broken relationships, failed dreams, old identities. We carry them like trophies of pain. We say this is proof I cared. But deep down, we are just afraid to put it down. Familiar pain can feel safer than unknown freedom. That sounds strange, but it's true. If you've lived with disappointment for years, it becomes part of your identity. You know how to handle it. You know how to expect it. It's predictable. But growth, see, that's uncertain. Peace, that's unfamiliar. So you choose what you know. A man once told me he stayed angry at his brother for 15 years over a business argument. 15 years. When I asked him why, he said, at least I know where we stand. I smiled gently and said, you stand far apart. Anger had become his routine. Reconciliation felt risky. So he chose distance because it was comfortable. Holding on can also feed the ego. Anger makes you feel important. It says, I was wronged. And yes, maybe you were. But if your entire personality becomes built around that moment, you shrink, your world becomes small. Conversations circle back to the same topic. New experiences are filtered through old wounds. It's like wearing glasses with a scratch in the middle. Everything you see looks damaged. And instead of changing the glasses, you blame the world for being blurry. Sometimes the world is fine, it's the lens that needs adjusting. I remember a woman who lost her job unexpectedly. She told everyone, "They ruined my career." For months, that sentence was her introduction. But one day, her friend joked, "If they ruined it, why are you still letting them manage it?" It was said lightly, with a smile, but it hit deeply. She realized she was still emotionally employed by a company that had already let her go. She was showing up to a job that didn't exist. And slowly she began to ask herself, what if this is not destruction? What if this is redirection? The moment she loosened her grip on resentment, new ideas started to form, not because the pain vanished, but because her hands were finally free to build something new. And let's talk honestly about fear. Sometimes holding on feels like loyalty. If I move on too fast, it means I didn't care. That belief keeps many people stuck. But caring and clinging are not the same. You can honor a memory without living inside it. You can appreciate a chapter without rereading it every night. Imagine watching the same sad movie every evening for years. At some point, you would know every line, every tear, every scene. But would your life move forward, or would you just become an expert in sorrow? There is a difference between remembering and reliving. Your mind and heart are not built to carry constant tension. Stress settles into your shoulders. Resentment tightens your jaw. Regret steals your sleep. And then you say, "I'm just tired." Of course you are tired. You are carrying yesterday on today's back. What if you experimented with something simple? Just for a moment, loosen your grip, not forever. Just for today. Ask yourself, what would happen if I did not revisit that thought right now? You might feel strange at first, maybe even empty. But in that space, something new can breathe. Because the truth is, hold in. G-on feels like safety. But real safety comes from inner stability, not from clinging to what already hurt you. The 50 key point is forgiveness is freedom, not friendship. And it means releasing the emotional chain without reopening the door. Many people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. They think if I forgive, I have to go back. No. Forgiveness is an internal decision. Friendship is an external arrangement. They are not the same. You can forgive someone and still block their number. You can forgive and still change the locks. Forgiveness is about your heart, not your contact list. It is about removing the poison from your system, not inviting the snake back into your garden. Let's be honest, sometimes we resist forgiveness because we think it lets the other person win. As if holding anger is some kind of scoreboard. I will stay mad so they know I was hurt. But most of the time, they don't know. Or they don't care. Or they have moved on. Meanwhile, you are carrying a heavy emotional suitcase through every room of your life. Imagine dragging a suitcase full of rocks into your office, into your friendships. People ask, "Why are you exhausted?" And you say, "Life is heavy." No, the suitcase is heavy. Forgiveness is simply putting it down. There was a teacher I once heard about who kept a jar on her desk. Every time she felt angry at someone, she dropped a small stone into the jar. By the end of the year, the jar was full. One day a student asked, "Why don't you empty it?" She smiled and said, "Because this is what happens when I don't forgive." The weight became visible. That is what unforgiveness does inside you. It fills you slowly, quietly. You don't notice at first. But then small things start to irritate you. You snap faster, you trust less. The stones from one person begin to affect everyone. Forgiveness is not saying, it was okay. It is saying, I will not let this control me anymore. Big difference. If someone broke your trust, that matters. If someone lied, that matters. Forgiveness does not erase accountability. It simply releases obsession. Think of it like a splinter in your finger. Ignoring it does not make you strong. It makes you infected. Taking it out might sting for a moment, but it allows healing. Some people say, I can't forgive. It still hurts. Of course it hurts. Forgiveness is not the absence of pain. It is the decision to stop feeding it. Now here is something powerful. Forgiveness does not require an apology. Waiting for an apology before you forgive is like waiting for rain in a desert. It might come, it might not. But your thirst remains. A man once told me he forgave his father years after his father passed away. There was no conversation, no dramatic hug, just a quiet moment where he said, I release you. He described it as taking off armor he had been wearing since childhood. Heavy armor, protective armor, but armor also limits movement. The day he forgave, he said he felt lighter, not because the past changed, but because his grip on it did. And yes, let's add a little humor to this serious topic. Some people say, I will forgive, but I will never forget. That sounds strong, right? But sometimes it just means, I will remember this forever and bring it up at family dinners. We laugh, but it's true. If you forgive and keep replaying the offense every time you argue, you are not forgiving. You are storing ammunition. Real forgiveness is not keeping a secret file labeled in case of emergency. It is deleting the file from your emotional desktop, not pretending it never existed, but choosing not to open it again. Forgiveness also protects your future. If you carry old bitterness into new relationships, you punish innocent people for crimes they did not commit. You become suspicious, guarded, defensive, defensive. And then you say, why does this always happen to me? It happens because you brought yesterday's storm into today's sunshine. Freedom means stepping into new spaces without dragging old shadows behind you. It means trusting yourself enough to set boundaries while keeping your heart open. Strong, yet soft, careful, yet not closed. That balance, say, comes when forgiveness is about your growth, not their approval. The sixth key point is letting go creates space for better things. And it means your life cannot receive what it is ready for if your hands are still full of what it has outgrown. Picture your hands clenched tight around old papers, faded photos, broken pieces of something that once mattered. Now imagine someone trying to place a gift in those same hands. Where will it go? You say you want peace. You say you want new love. You say you want growth. But space is required. Empty space, breathing space, and sometimes the only way to create it is to release what you have been gripping for far too long. Think about your closet at home. Be honest. There are clothes in there you have not worn in years, yet you keep them. Maybe one day, maybe it will fit again, maybe it will come back in style. Meanwhile, your closet is crowded. You struggle to find what actually suits you now. Life is the same. When you refuse to let go of outdated beliefs, expired relationships, old disappointments, you crowd your inner space. Then you say, nothing new is coming into my life. It might be knocking. There is just no room inside. I once met a man who stayed in a job he hated for 12 years. Every morning he complained. Every evening he sighed. But he would say, at least it's stable. Stable misery. Safe frustration. One day, The company restructured and he was forced to leave. He was terrified, angry, lost, but within 6 months, he started a small service business doing something he genuinely enjoyed. When I asked him what changed, he laughed and said, I didn't have the courage to leave, so life cleared the space for me. Sometimes we cling to what is familiar, even if it drains us, and only when it is removed do we realize how much lighter we feel. Letting go is not just about people, it is about identities. Maybe you have been holding on to a version of yourself that no longer fits. The always responsible one, the never emotional one, the I must please everyone one. These roles once protected you. They once helped you survive. But survival is not the same as growth. If you keep wearing old armor, how will you move freely? Armor is heavy, necessary in battle, but exhausting in daily life. Space means allowing yourself to become someone new, someone softer, someone stronger, someone different. And here is something subtle. When you let go, you send a message to yourself. You say, I trust that better exists. That trust changes your posture. It changes how you walk into rooms. A woman I know ended a long relationship that was comfortable but stagnant. She cried for weeks. She doubted herself. But she also felt a strange openness. She started taking classes she had postponed. She reconnected with hobbies she had forgotten. She told me, I feel like my life has air again. Air, that's what space feels like. Fresh, light, full of possibility. Sometimes we fear that if we let go, there will be nothing left. An empty room, an empty heart. But emptiness is not always loss. Sometimes it is preparation. Think of a field after harvest. It looks bare, quiet, almost lifeless. But that space is necessary for the next planting season. If the old crops never clear, the new seeds cannot take root. Your heart works the same way. If it is packed with old grief and outdated dreams, new joy struggles to grow. Letting go is clearing the soil. And let's smile for a moment. Some of us treat emotional baggage like frequent flyer miles. We collect it proudly. Look at all I've been through. Yes, you have been through a lot, but you don't need to carry every souvenir. Not every lesson needs to stay in your backpack. Keep the wisdom, leave the weight. Imagine walking into your future with light steps instead of dragging emotional luggage behind you. Doors open differently when you arrive without clutter. Opportunities feel less intimidating when you are not already exhausted. Space is not just physical, it is mental, it is emotional, and when you create it intentionally, life has somewhere beautiful to land. The seventh key point is your future deserves a lighter version of you. And it means the person you are becoming cannot fully rise if you keep dragging the weight of who you used to be. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine meeting your future self. Not a fantasy version, a real one, calm, steady, focused. There is a softness in their face, but also strength in their eyes. Now ask yourself, would that version of you thank you for holding on to every old grudge? Would they say, I'm so glad you stayed stuck back there? Or would they whisper, you could have arrived sooner? Your future is not built only by goals. It is built by emotional capacity. If you carry resentment into tomorrow, it will shape your decisions. If you carry regret, it will shrink your courage. If you carry shame, it will silence your voice. And then you wonder why opportunities feel heavy. It's because you are not walking alone. You are walking with a backpack full of yesterday. And yesterday has no business negotiating your tomorrow. I once met an older man at a small community event. He had kind eyes and a quiet smile. We started talking, And he told me he spent 20 years angry at his brother over an inheritance dispute. 20 years of silence, 20 years of stubborn pride. One day, he said, he looked in the mirror and saw grey hair he didn't remember earning, and it hit him, I am aging but my anger is not. His anger was still young, still loud, still fresh, but his life was moving. He called his brother that week, not to argue, not to revisit numbers, just to say, I don't want to carry this into old age. He told me something powerful. I realized my future grandfather who smiles more than he frowns, who smiles more than he frowns. Sometimes we think holding on to pain keeps us strong. But strength is not tension. Strength is flexibility. Think of a tree in a storm. The rigid branches snap, the flexible ones bend and survive. If you refuse to bend emotionally, you break slowly over time. Your future needs you adaptable, open, willing to learn, not hardened by old battles. A heart that stays tight for too long forgets how to relax. And a mind that constantly replays mistakes forgets how to imagine new possibilities. Let's be honest, regret is one of the heaviest emotions to carry. I should have, I could have. Why didn't I? Those sentences feel intelligent, reflective. But if repeated too long, they become chains. A woman once told me she replayed a career decision she made 10 years ago. She believed she chose the wrong path. Every new challenge reminded her of that choice. Finally, a friend asked her, if you could go back, would you really be the same person? She paused. Because the truth was, the so-called wrong decision taught her resilience, empathy, skill. It shaped her. The path wasn't perfect, but it built depth. Your future does not need a flawless past. It needs a wise one. And here is a gentle truth. Sometimes you are addicted to your old identity. The heartbroken one, the undervalued one, the misunderstood one. Those roles feel familiar. They explain your mood. They justify your distance. But what happens if you release them? Who are you without that label? That question can feel scary. It's like moving to a new city where no one knows your history. But it is also freeing. You get to choose who you are becoming, not who you were wounded as. Your future deserves energy. Clean energy, not energy drained by constant emotional debates with ghosts of the past. Imagine running a marathon while arguing with someone who is not even on the track. It sounds absurd, yet many people live that way. They train, they strive, they dream, but inside, there is an ongoing argument with someone who hurt them years ago. How much faster would you run if you stopped the argument? How much clearer would your thinking be if you weren't offending yourself in conversations that ended long ago? There is a version of you 5 years from now who has made peace with what happened, who speaks about it calmly, who learned from it, who grew beyond it. That version is not superhuman. They simply chose to lighten the load, and that choice can begin quietly. Today, not with a dramatic announcement, not with fireworks, just a simple shift in mindset. A whisper that says, my future is too valuable to be shaped by my past. And when you begin to walk with that awareness, your steps feel different, your shoulders soften, your breathing deepens. Because you are no longer carrying everything that happened to you. You are carrying only what will help you become who you are meant to be. Maybe the real power of letting go is this. It returns you to yourself. Not the wounded version, not the angry version, not the version shaped by someone else's choices. It returns you to the steady center that was always there. You have carried enough, you have replayed enough, you have replayed enough. At some point, Growth is not about learning more, it is about releasing more, releasing the need to be understood by everyone, releasing the need for perfect closure, releasing the habit of defining yourself by what hurt you. There is a quiet strength in saying, "That happened, and I am still here." There is dignity in choosing peace over pride. There is maturity in valuing your future more than your frustration. You do not erase your past by letting go. You integrate it. You take the lesson, leave the weight, and move forward lighter. Not naive, not bitter, just wiser. And when you walk back into your life after this moment, nothing outside may look different at first. The same people, the same responsibilities, the same world. But inside, there is space. Space to breathe, space to think clearly, space to respond instead of react. You begin to realize that peace is not something you find at the end of life, it is something you choose within it. So if something no longer belongs in your heart, you can release it. If a story no longer serves your growth, you can rewrite it. If a burden has been carried long enough, you can set it down. Not with anger, not with drama, but with quiet certainty, because your life is moving forward with or without your permission. And when you choose to move with it instead of against it, you feel aligned, steady, grounded. Steady, grounded. The past may have shaped you, but it does not own you. The pain may have touched you, but it does not define you. What defines you now is the decision to live lighter. And sometimes that is the strongest decision a person can make.